How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of On the Line. Guys, we are going to give you 7 tips. 7 tips that if you're a civilian, actually, to be honest with you, these tips, some of these tips could also apply for custody, but technically this video is for our civilian staff members out there. 7 tips to live by. And who's going to provide us with these 7 tips? None other than the expert in civilian staffing, there it is, and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon, Connie Alleyne. What's up, Connie?
Hello, everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. So interestingly enough, I put together these tips really as part of like training process. And today we're going to share those tips with everyone. So hopefully you guys apply it and it works for you.
As I said, by the way, guys, if you're custody and you're watching it, it's a good video for you guys too, because one thing is there's some of these tips here that we need to listen to, but it's also good for us to kind of make sure that civilians are listening to these tips. So let's go right into it. Tip number 1.
So tip number 1 is to follow the agency's policies and instructions of your supervisor. And the reason why this is important is because civilians are usually hired by a third party. Like we aren't usually direct employees of corrections. And so oftentimes we go in thinking like, I'm only going to follow the agency policy and I'm not really going to pay attention to custody's policy. And the reality is that you need to be aware of both. And when there are conflicts in those two, you need to seek out your supervisor for instructions on how to navigate that conflict.
Yeah, and I think it's great advice, guys, because we can't survive in corrections operating in an isolated way, which means that a lot of the stuff that we do, we are going to interact, and we need policies that really do reflect the needs of all parties that are involved in that interaction. And if I can add on that, and I think Connie started to touch onto it, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand something, make sure you go to your supervisor, or if you are a supervisor, you know, if there's like another department that policy affects, go to that other department and say, hey, listen, we got this going on. How does this affect you? And this way we can kind of keep things running smooth. But also policies and procedures are written on the lifeblood of a facility, the do's and don'ts. So in the end, those policies and procedures will protect your job on multiple levels. I think that's great advice, Connie. What's tip number 2?
Tip number 2 is training. Every opportunity you get, I would say take training, because I feel like this is one of those places and spaces where you can't train enough, where you can't learn enough in order to be prepared for all of the unknowns that we are going to face from day to day.
Yeah, and guys, obviously, just to compliment, you know, obviously there's stuff that, you know, the training that's offered by the agency, but I was always a big fan that if you could seek outside training, that's always good, because anything that can make you more effective, hopefully the department supports that. Like when you're taking outside training that could ultimately affect the job that you're doing, hopefully that's supported. And I want to add something else to the training too, is if we're giving out this training, I mean, yes, we have the liability training, but also we have training that can help us evolve and improve. Hopefully when we send people out to these trainings, we listen to their input, you know, so basically it gives us a chance to grow. Don't just send them to training to fill up numbers, you know, send them to training and then come back, debrief them, and maybe there's stuff that we could apply, but training is always worth the money spent. And again, as long as you have staff that's motivated, that staff that knows how to, that wants to train, and then partner with staff who wants to take the training. It's just a beautiful dance. So tip number, wait, you gotta wait for it, Connie. Wait for it. No, because then you're gonna mess up my number.
I'm not jumping in, I'm waiting.
Okay, so we did 2, right? So if I add 1 number to 2, brings me to tip 3. Tip 3, Connie, what do we got?
So tip number 3 is a little more, I don't want to say, okay, so tip number 3 is to become aware of the law or become familiar with the law. And I only say that because although we don't have much engagement with the population and their legal side of things, sometimes you may get a request from an inmate as a service provider. And if you are not familiar with the law, it could get you caught up in the mix of something that they're trying to get done. So for example, I was asked one day to call someone's girlfriend because the inmate needed a place to stay when he got home or got released. And I was like, why do you want me to call your girlfriend? That's something you should be arranging if your girlfriend is going to be okay with you staying at her place. And it turned out that the girlfriend had an order of protection against him. And I could have inadvertently been violating that protection by calling her on his behalf. But usually that's not something that as civilians that we think about, because it's just, oh, it's just a call. It's not just a call. And even though it was within the scope of my title at the time to make a call to try to do some family reunification, it certainly would not have been appropriate in that instance.
And just like policy and procedures, you know, the inmates are going to know it. You know, so same thing with the laws. I mean, they're pretty much, some of them are, even though they break them, they're experts in it because they spend most of their time trying to find the loopholes. So you're right. The more you learn about the law, less likely you're going to be pushed into one of those loopholes. So I think that's great advice. And I don't think that's advice that we hear a lot. So, you know, and now that brings us to question 4. Still on one hand, guys. I have one more. So I could go up to 5 on this hand.
Oh my God. All right. So tip number 4 is to find a good mentor and actually listen to their feedback and their insights. I mean, if anyone has seen me on Tier Talk, I talk all the time about the different folks who mentored me, whether it was custody officers or more senior civilian staff, who they would give me feedback. And really, I think I'm safe today because of them, because they could see down the road in a way that I couldn't because I just didn't have the insight.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, that's kind of what we do on Tier Talk, by the way. We've kind of put ourselves in a position to mentor, which I think is great because it's very rewarding, guys. Being a mentor is kind of rewarding on both ways. I mean, definitely receiving the information, but also being able to provide information. There's something rewarding about that, and especially providing it to an audience that wants to listen. But again, you know, you want to try to connect with people that share the same values, you know, so like you want to mentor people, you want to be mentored by people that are kind of in the same direction that you want to go. Like for me, I knew I was going to move up. So a sergeant was a great mentor for me at one point. Then eventually when I crossed into admin, my boss was a great mentor because they've been there, they've done it. Hopefully they were successful. I mean, successful is more than just getting the next position, obviously. Successful deals with the dynamics of how you deal with people and whatnot. But, you know, having that mentor modeling from someone that's going to kind of help you get through what they've been through themselves, I think is definitely great for when you make this a career, you know, just the longevity of that. So I love that advice. Now, I'm still on the same hand. Question 5. I'm using my thumb.
All right, now, so tip number 5, we might not think we need it, but this one is that you keep good records. And I say this because as you journey, especially if this is going to be your career, you want to keep records of all the things that you've done, that you've accomplished, because you cannot lean on the department to always be able to give you everything that you need, right? So, you know, I had a conversation with someone who was in the process of retiring and she couldn't find all of her stuff, right? And it happened to be that we had gone from one contract to another. And so there was some break in like where all of the employment documentation was. And it turned out like they almost wanted her to work an extra year because she couldn't find all of the documentation that supported like her start date and her this and her that. And for me, it was just kind of one of those things that were like, I would never think about that early on in my career, that I need to keep my records, but your employment records really matter as you move up in the field, as you decide what you're going to do either way. And when it comes to calculating time, now I never knew anything about calculating time. And when you took the exam, it was just a lot happening. And so from her and a few others, I learned that keeping records of things that transpire over your career really can serve you well as you prepare to transition, whether it's from one role to another or actually to retire out.
And by the way, in corrections, document. That's the big thing. We teach that in almost every video we do. You know, that's what the law book's for. Another piece of advice, carry a little notebook with you. You know, if there's certain things that are unusual that come out during the day, write it down, because you never know when someone's going to try to question you. You can go back in that notebook with confidence and say, no, I wasn't there that day, or no, that wasn't me. So having that little notebook will also help you. You know, you never know when you need it, you know, because at any time we can be sent to court. So, okay, now this is a tough decision. Do I want to use, no, Connie, come on now. Do I want to use two hands to show the 6? You see how this looks? You see this? The 5 on the, or you already know I use 5 on this hand, so I can just simply go like this. Your call. What am I doing here?
Yeah, this works.
All right.
Yeah. Because it's also a thumbs up.
Thumbs up to the great information you provided. And also number 6.
Number 6. So number 6 is to never ignore your gut feeling, but never rely solely on it, right? You want to make sure that, yes, if something feels off, it feels uncomfortable, something doesn't feel right, that you check into that feeling. I mean, it's one thing if you're just scared, it's another thing if your body is responding to something in the environment, although you can't quite put your finger on it. But what I would say is that if it is responding to something that's going on, you also need to kind of figure out what the something is. And sometimes instead of you relying on yourself to just do that, you can always tap into custody to be like, hey, something seems a little off here. Is it just me? Right? Because it does help you do a gut check, but it also helps you build that relationship with custody.
Yeah, I love that, because obviously, and as custody, we listen to our gut all the time. I mean, that's just something that the gut feeling comes with experience. You know what I mean? It's like you feel something's not right. So that to me is truly experience. But again, when you're still developing an understanding of this profession, sometimes you get that gut feeling, but you don't know what it truly means. So I agree with that. It's great to go to someone who can help explain something to you. And I love that, because another key thing about that is that you see the communication between both parties, between custody and civilians. And then, you know, as we're doing that more often, inmates, they see that, makes it less likely for them to pounce on any one of us. All right, so this is simple. This is simple. You know, I was going to go this way, possibly this way, but you know what's cool? If I take the thumb and go this way, there's a 7 there. I'll give you a second.
Oh my God. Yes,
right.
we see it. We see it. We see it.
Number 7. What do you got?
Number 7 is to form personal and professional relationships without compromising your integrity. So I think that, you know, a lot of times some people are so like, oh, I just got to stay work focused and I can't become friendly. And some people go to the other end and they're super friendly and they're not work focused. And there has to be a balance between being able to be yourself and still get to know the people that you work with, because those professional relationships that you have allow you to be effective in doing your job. And those personal relationships you develop is really what opens the door for people to want to support you. Those are the people who are going to show you that they care, and they care about your growth, they care about your safety. And so you don't necessarily want to have one without the other. That doesn't mean, though, that you have to be doing things that are against the rules, the regulations, your values. So you don't have to put your integrity on the line in order to establish a meaningful work relationship with the people you work with.
And I think what's great about that, Connie, is everything that we've discussed so far, 7 kind of rounds it out. Because if you follow the advice and the other 6 tips, it leads to that professional relationship, you know, and it really does. Guys, the key of this all is really to truly be that professional. When you're a professional, not only will you get the respect of your peers, but you're also going to get the respect of the inmates. Believe it or not, guys, the inmates do trust professionalism. Because in professionalism, they see consistency, they see confidence, they see all the things that says, okay, when this officer here is, when this civilian staff member is here, we know they're here to get the job done. We know that they're going to be effective. And again, most of the inmates want to take advantage of what's being offered, whether it's programming, obviously safety and security, whatever it is. So being professional, I think, is pretty much the root of everything that we need to be and do in this profession. Hey, Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say to all civilians that it really matters. You matter. Your role matters. The things that you come into the facility to do to support the population, to support custody, it all matters. And sometimes you don't get recognized, but I want you to understand that we do recognize the work that you do. We recognize the diverse backgrounds that you bring into the environment. And that is a bonus, right? That is added value that you bring to the institution of corrections. And I just want to thank you because you could go work someplace else, right? And for me, I am grateful that, we do get the value of having you in the institutions. So this is really just a thank you to all civilians, and really remind you, like, custody is there to be your support as well, right? It doesn't have to be us, them, and you can be a part of helping bridge that gap and sort of close that divide.
Yeah, just in closing on my end, you are a respected and valued member of our community. You're essential. So in the end, it's great for us to touch into this side of the dialogue and let people know that we're working together as one, that we shouldn't be working in any way isolated of each other. So I thought this was a great topic. Thank you, Connie, for giving us these 7 great tips. As always, guys, the show is on the line. Now, if you haven't, guys, please subscribe to Guardian RFID. We come out with content. I mean, they come out with content multiple times a week. We release content every Friday. So it's got a lot of good information. Please check out the videos. We cover everything pretty much at this point. There's so many videos that we posted up there that we try to really, get a real good understanding of the profession out there. So hopefully you guys get a chance. Make sure you're subscribed and keep on coming back. As always, guys, the show is on the line. Thank you and be safe.